And Sarah was always amazing because, especially during the pandemic, in her beautiful spread that she lives in, and she would have this shot set up in the garage with trees. Her arborist husband had created this incredible idyllic country retreat. And everyone in the TSN studio in Scarborough was like, where does she live? This is incredible. Like, and then the wind would be going. I almost said she had a wind machine, her beautiful hair blowing in the wind, and I would always make fun of her for having a wind machine, and she would just lead into it. Like, she wouldn't be like, stop doing that. She'd be like, yep, I've got a wind machine now.
Welcome to Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets Halloween edition. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Jamie Thomas, your host. A huge show, as always, for you. Joining us is TSN anchor Jay Onrait and NHL insider Chris Johnston to talk about, in the wake of the Adam Johnston tragedy, will there be equipment changes coming up in the National Hockey League? He'll also address the Frozen Frenzy to see if that was a big hit with the NHL. And, of course, is the panic button being pressed in Alberta with the struggles of the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers? Plus, your favorite Blake Wheeler moments in a Jets jersey coming up in the mailbag. But first, speaking of Wheeler, Wheeler made his return to Canada Life Center for the first time since leaving the Winnipeg Jets in the offseason. Here are a couple of former teammates on the return of Wheeler, starting with Josh Morrissey, followed by longtime line mate Mark Scheifele.
Yeah, it's going to be weird, obviously. Up until this season, basically, since I came into the team, Wheels was he was the captain while I was always on the team, and he's been here since I've got drafted to this team. So basically 10 years with him, and it's going to be weird to see him on the other side. I have a ton of admiration for him. He's a great friend, and we shared a lot of great times as a group and together. But, certainly it's going to be weird, no doubt. But once the game gets going, like I said, I went against him a ton in practice every year. Right winger on lefty, dumping it in my corner. So I'm expecting to see that a few times tonight for sure.
You just think about all the times you had with them. Spent 11 years of my life with them, and a lot of really fun memories, a lot of really fun, exciting games, a lot of good times, tough times, and you're side by side with them throughout it all. So it definitely will be tough to keep the emotions in, but obviously super proud to know him and have him as a friend, and lucky, you're very lucky to have him there.
At the time that we taped this podcast, the Jets were coming off a relatively successful road trip where they came home with 3 out of a possible 4 points, that overtime loss in Montreal, the last game that they played. So the best line on that 2-game road trip, the third line of Adam Lowry, Mason Appleton, and Nito Niederreiter. Here's some thoughts on the play and dominance of those 3 players.
They just do it the hard way. They just go and work their tails off, and they grind, and they're big bodies, and they do a great job of supporting each other. It seems like one guy's in there pounding, the other guy's real close for support, and they do a good job of putting pucks on the net.
Yeah, I think he's been playing really well for us and generating chances, and a lot of shot volume from him, and it was only a matter of time before some of them went in. He had some great looks earlier in the slot, and sometimes it's funny, you get an empty netter and it's a little bit of a weight off your shoulders, and he's playing really well for us.
There was just a perfect fall going. But, of course, as we close in on Halloween, the snow, the cold returns to the province of Manitoba. But something that will heat you up is our play of the week. And who is it? One more time, it's Adam Lowry.
Underway here between Winnipeg and Montreal. The Jets looking to score, and they do! Lowry with his second of the game, the go-ahead goal. Early on the score sheet once again.
Time now for the mailbag and your thoughts on your favorite Blake Wheeler moments in a Jets jersey. Of course, you can use ground control at winnipegjets.com for any comment anytime. And our good friends at Reddit, the Winnipeg Jets sector, they also help out quite a bit. But I got a good comment here from Scott. He said, easy favorite moment was when he won the shootout in Toronto, snapped off the chin strap and signaled the team to the locker room. Another great quote coming from Fraser McLeod, huge Jets fan. He says his favorite Wheeler moment was Game 7 versus the Predators in 2018. He said the captain had 2 points, but it's so much more than that. I'm a lifelong Jets fan who had never seen our team advance past the second round ever. So we watched the boys roll into Nashville with the eyes of Manitoba on them, with all the pressure that comes with that. That game was classic Wheeler for me. Solid, dependable, leading by example, and provided us with the stable presence and leadership that team needed. For a team that was trying to figure out who was driving the bus, Wheeler became our captain, and we never asked that question again. So thank you so much. The responses from Fraser and Scott in this situation. Blake Wheeler, of course, that return here to Winnipeg. Up next, after this break, we're going to bring in Jay Onrait of TSN. Looking forward to that.
Can we do top shelf? Top shelf. Do
top
it.
Shelf. Special.
Booty.
Line 1.
The booty. Oh, gosh, this is morning. This is morning TV, Ace. I'll leave it to the experts.
So I'm going to go over here and just talk to a few folks. Okay, tell me, what do you think? Russia or Canada tonight?
Canada, for sure.
All right, so to sum up, Bev, we had the Teletubbies dancing at Whistler. And then we had a nightclub with 4 people in it. I mean, if this isn't quality morning TV, I don't know what is. I don't know what is, Bev.
We're going to take a break. We're going to take a break and can you remove that, please?
Something about children competing at an international level. I don't even really know what's going on anymore, I gotta be honest.
That was Jay Onrait only 13 years ago during the unholy alliance between Rogers and Bell during the Vancouver Summer Olympics. And you and Bev had some great moments in that one. And I wonder, with all the laughter of the Teletubbies and the 4 people in a nightclub in Whistler, how early in the morning was that segment?
Question. I know that I remember setting my alarm for 11:30 p.m. to wake up for the shift. And I remember I would walk over to the set at midnight and I would see people like coming home from the bars and stuff and be very grumpy about it.
That was the best shift you ever took.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I had to, because we were on air at 3 a.m. because of course, we were on the West Coast, Pacific time, and they wanted us on at 6 a.m. So, we started at 3 a.m. So we got there for midnight. So, that was probably, right at the beginning of the show, because assuming that amazingly they had extended last call to 3 a.m. at that point when we started the show. So, I think that was probably right off the start of the show. And I know it was a good week and a half into the games. So I was probably extra grumpy about it. And it was, the best part about that whole thing is that the crew really appreciated that I said that I really called out the ridiculousness of what CTV was trying to do there, which has sort of been a mantra throughout my entire career, which is amazing that I'm still employed by anyone, frankly.
How long did it take Bev to compose herself after that, and everybody on the floor?
Well, the one thing I would say about Bev is I think the first 2 days she was probably regretting taking the job itself, and then she really by day 3 she was all in with me. We were very much a team, very much in the trenches together. But that wasn't just Bev; it was everybody on the set. It was everybody who was involved, because it was really thrown together fast. The original plan was that it would be just Canada AM, which was the morning show at the time, was just going to be live from Vancouver, and they were going to have, the whole Canada AM crew. And it was sort of last minute. And when I say last minute, maybe 2 months before the game started, I got a call to say, we want to kind of add a sports element to this since it is the Olympics. And we feel like you could kind of fit in with these guys. And I will say, I think for the most part, everybody kind of accepted me with open arms, but I think it was just a lot of trepidation because I was very much determined to take everything over immediately. And everyone just kind of came along for the ride. So, it was a really fun experience. And it didn't, Bev was very much on board. Her reaction to that whole Teletubbies thing, I think was just I think it was the kind I was saying the things that she was thinking.
One of the things in local television is such a great time, and it was in my career. I'm sure it was in yours. You were a big influence here in Winnipeg on breakfast television. We all know about A Channel, and it's Mark in Western Canada. What was your favorite moment in your time here in Winnipeg on breakfast television?
Man, there's so many. It was such a special time. And, it's such a cliche. You don't realize it at the time. But, now when people ask me, well, how do I get into the business? I used to be able to say, well, all you have to do is go to a small market and work really hard and go with a good attitude and then, move up. And then maybe you get to a bigger market like Winnipeg and you can really make your mark. And then you can, if you want to come back to Toronto or whatever, you can do that. Now all these types of jobs are disappearing. And I really appreciate the fact that I had the chance, and like you did, Jamie, to make this sort of journey where not only did I go to Winnipeg, a city I didn't know anything about, didn't ever imagine myself living in, and then I get there and I just fell in love with it. I remember halfway through my time there, I was only there for 2 years, and halfway through my time there, I remember saying to myself, like, I think I'm just going to live here for the rest of my life. Like, I really enjoy it here. I really loved the city. I embraced it. Loved where I lived. Loved living in Osborne Village. Loved that it was a 5-minute drive to work. And the best part about doing the Big Breakfast was that within approximately 2 months, I basically knew everyone in town because they were all guests on the show, like the police chief, the fire chief, the mayor, everybody. It was just amazing. Every restaurant owner. But yeah, it was just a special time. Probably the most memorable thing was just working with John Youngberg, who was kind of like me in a way, a Massachusetts born and raised guy who had come through town to do stand-up comedy, met a Winnipeg girl and never left. And he still hasn't left to this day. And it was kind of similar to my experience, just kind of didn't imagine myself there, but got there and loved it. We both loved it. And it was such an amazing platform for the two of us in so many different ways. For John, who was used to doing stand-up, it was sort of a chance for him to really hone his interview skills and really become a broadcaster, something he didn't know how to do until that point. And for me, it was like the opposite. I knew how to be a broadcaster. I just needed to know how to ad-lib for 3 hours without a script and just go and fly by the seat of my pants. And if things went wrong, no big deal, just keep rolling with it. And we were embraced right away by the audience in Winnipeg. It was really it was really a wonderful experience overall. Probably the most memorable thing was, and everybody knows this story, Dominique Bossart, who won bronze in kickboxing at the Sydney Olympics, came on our show, Winnipeg girl, and demonstrated a roundhouse kick on me and kicked me into our neon Big Breakfast sign, which I smashed and destroyed beyond all repair. And I think that video still exists somewhere on YouTube. And it wasn't staged at all. And I almost could see it. I almost could see it happening because I held she had me hold up like a gym mat to protect myself. And I kept moving it down lower and lower toward my nether regions because I was just very concerned. But she kept saying, no, like she didn't want to say like idiot. I'm a world champion kickboxer. Like, I won't kick you anywhere you shouldn't be kicked. I'll kick you in the chest, but you have to hold it high. And I just, it's like a male thing, right? It's like an instinct. You protect the thing that's most sensitive. And I just held it a little too low. And man, she was so strong. She just sent me flying.
Can you still feel it?
Things like that.
Can you still
feel it to this day? Yeah. Yeah. Still a little bit, both physically and emotionally. I still feel it.
Did you ever find out producer Tim's last name? And do you remember it to this day after just referring to him as producer Tim?
Yes. We talk to him all the time. I see him all the time. It's so funny, like, and it's Moriarty, by the way, if anyone wants to know. That's a big secret. Yeah, and it's funny because Tim's still working with Dan on his podcast, so he'll never be truly away from us. But yeah, that was a really magical time too, because I always loved, and I don't know if you feel the same way, Jamie, the shows I loved most growing up were shows where, or not even growing up, like a show like the Dan Patrick radio show.
That's my favorite show.
There you go. One of the reasons I think that show's so successful is obviously he's an incredible broadcaster, and his credentials need no, we don't need to pump him up in that way. But what I think makes the show work is that he had the 4 guys working on his show, the Danettes, and he brought them into the show in this sort of way that you feel like you're a part of a world, almost like a part of a special club that only you and all the other listeners are a part of. And it's such a fun feeling to like a show that much and to feel like you're a part of a show like that. And we didn't set out to create that same kind of thing with our show, but it sort of happened like all the best things do. It sort of happened by accident. And the reason we started talking about Tim was he was so paranoid that we were going to say something that was going to get us fired or canceled, or all 3 of us fired or canceled, very early on, like 2002, 2003. And so, Dan just started talking about him on air, and people just instantly loved it. And I remember when we did our cross-country tours with the show around 2010, that was the question we got the most, like, is producer Tim with you? Where is he? What does he look like? He was such a mystery to people. And that's when I realized, like, oh, this is awesome that
You're
people
onto
care
something.
that much. Yeah, you're onto something here. Like, people really love the mystery that we've created behind it. And, it's, you get told a million times you can get highlights anywhere. So we were, I think, very early on realized that it couldn't just be about highlights. It had to be about, if you're turning on our show in the morning, these were people you would want to hang out with and be a part of their world, so to speak. And on the other side of it, Tim really did keep us probably from getting fired 10 to 15 different times over the course of our time with him, for sure. No question.
What do you think almost got you fired, if you can think of one thing?
Well, so many things. I mean, actually, in hindsight, and every night when I leave for work, even now, my wife says, don't get fired, because I think she thinks it's going to happen any second now. But I always go back to my time doing the show with Dan and Merrick Malik, the former New York Rangers defenseman, who was just a big guy and wasn't really like super open with the media, didn't do a lot of interviews. He was at a New York Knicks game, and we just happened to see him courtside at a New York Knicks game and the highlights of the Knicks game, and he was with his son who had red hair. And I said, the dumbest thing that I've ever said in the history of my career to this day, I said, there's Merrick Malik and his redheaded stepchild. I don't know why I said it. It just came out. It was a stupid thing. It wasn't even funny. I'm embarrassed about it to this day. But the worst part is, at the time we were doing the show at 2 a.m, and then it would, run all morning. And that's when most people saw it. But because we did it live at 2, and not that many people would have seen it at 2, after the show, producer Tim said to me, we can actually just cut that out. Like, we could fix it. We could go back. You could redo it. And, I'm like, it's 3 a.m. I'm cranky. I'm like, you know what? Nobody's even going to notice. Nobody's going to care. And the next morning I wake up to like a series of like texts and phone calls from my bosses, and specifically one from Pierre McGuire, who was working with us at the time. And Pierre texted me and said, listen, there's a problem. Your show, you may not know this, but all the NHL teams play your show in the dressing rooms in the morning during their morning skate. And then when they come back from the morning skate, they watch you guys in the morning. And Merrick Malik watched you this morning and heard you say that about him and his kid.
Oh.
And I've been on the phone with him all morning, basically trying to convince him not to beat the living crap out of you. So maybe take a little more care going forward, because people are watching you. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's a good piece of advice. And that's why I'll defend Pierre. When people get on Pierre's case about anything, I'm always very quick to defend Pierre, because he really came through for me that day. So yeah, I mean, any other situation, if that happens today, I'm probably out on the street for sure. It was a different time.
Just an embarrassing moment happened that we're not going to talk about to anyone. So we'll have this little personal moment between the two of us. So Sarah Oleski, of course, is a big time fan of your show. She's been on your show a million times during her day as he ascends. She brags about it all the time. She also bragged about the other day that she sent you and O-Dog some Adam Lowry t-shirts. Can you talk about your affinity for the Jets captain, and are you guys going to wear those t-shirts that Oleski sent to you?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked me about this, Jamie.
I never told you I was going to ask you this question.
No, I'm so excited. You can see my face. I just get my eyes light up whenever I think about Adam Lowry, talk about Adam Lowry. He's just such a special player and person to me and O-Dog. And we just sort of bonded over him, because I think we just started, when he was really starting to come on a few years ago. I think we would both text, like, have you seen Lowry? Like, man, he looks, he's going to be way better than his dad. We're just like so into him. Like, I just love the way he plays. I love the way he plays the game. I love everything about him. That he's got a little scoring touch. He's an ideal, probably the perfect third line center. He's just And then he'll stick up for his teammates. The fact that he'll fight guys like Reeves if he has to is just bewildering to me that he will do that, because he just knows there's no one else who could possibly do it. And he holds his own every time, and he just plays the right way, hard and fast. And I was so happy to see he was named captain. I thought it was just the perfect choice. And I hope he plays there his whole career. And I hope someday his jersey goes up into the rafters, because I honestly think he's going to end up like that kind of like Chris Neal in Ottawa, where, it's just, to other fan bases, they might not understand how important he was or is to this team, but definitely Jets fans do understand that. And we just O-Dog and I just bonded over our mutual love of this guy. Our man crush couldn't be more obvious. And we just happened to be doing, O-Dog and I happened to be doing an interview at the start of the year about the upcoming season, and Adam had just been named captain. So we were both, saying how excited we were about that, and how cool it would be if we could get shirtsies. And Sarah right away was like, we're making them with the C on them. We're like, oh my God, the C, yeah. So we got our shirtsies. So our plan, I believe, it's funny, we're just kind of making final arrangements. I think the next TSN broadcast where O-Dog will be in studio, because he's not always in studio. So I want to get him in studio so we can both have the shirts on together. I think it's the 14th of November.
Okay.
So we're going to get him over into the studio, and we're going to model those bad boys. And we won't look as good as Adam does in his jersey, but I'll do a lot of working out up until that point, so I can really try to fill that extra small out, and really look as tough as I possibly can in my Adam Lowry shirtsy, which I will treasure. I will never ever get rid of it.
Jets gear is going to love this one. How much do you guys miss Orlesky at TSN?
So much. She's she's such a, you've worked with her for a long time, Jamie, and I think everybody there knows, she's such a, first of all, quality person. When I think of the city itself, I think of her. I think of the type of person she is, warm, caring, hardworking, very courteous, but also does her own thing, doesn't mind, she wants to make sure everything's done right, and that's exactly how it should be. It's a massive loss for TSN that she's no longer with us. I think every single person there would tell you that. But it's a testament to how much everyone likes her at TSN that when she took the job with the Jets, everyone was like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. It's like, why would you want to have to travel all summer doing CFL? And I know she loved CFL. But that's a lot of travel, and she was so good at it. Like all Canadian television, if you're good at something, they'll just ask you to do twice as much of it. And that was, for Sarah, I think it was just a lot of travel. So I think it's so great. I'm just so happy for her. It's a big loss, and it's a bummer that, you mentioned her being on the show. She was such a fun guest on the show.
Yeah.
And the other thing I will say too, and I mean this in all sincerity, is, the way I do the show, one of the things I like the most is our guest bits, as we call them, our little bits before the interview starts, where we're just getting ready, we're chatting and stuff. And what I like about that stuff is none of it is staged in any capacity. And I'm sure people are skeptical about that, but I can sincerely say that it's all just very real. And what I like about putting it on TV is it just shows that we actually do all get along really well. And Sarah was always amazing because, especially during the pandemic, in her beautiful spread that she lives in, and she would have this shot set up in the garage with trees. Her arborist husband had created this incredible idyllic country retreat. And, everyone in the TSN studio in Scarborough was like, where does she live? This is incredible. And then, the wind would be going. I almost said she had a wind machine, her beautiful hair flowing in the wind. And I would always make fun of her for having a wind machine, and she would just lead into it. Like, she wouldn't be like, stop doing that. She'd be like, yep, I've got a wind machine now. She didn't take herself too seriously, and I love people like that. People who are so good at their jobs, but at the same time aren't taking this business too seriously, because quite frankly, it is at the end of the day entertainment. And sometimes I think people lose sight of that.
Mm-hmm.
So she, she's great. So yeah, I could go on. We could do the whole podcast talking about how much I like Sarah Orlesky, no question.
All right. I promise you to keep this brief, but favorite Halloween costume of your lifetime?
Oh man, I'm so embarrassed because I should be a Halloween guy, but I'm not really a Halloween guy. So it's just an embarrassing answer, but it's the one I'm going to wear tomorrow night. I'm actually taking Halloween off this year. My kids are at that age where I'm like, I want to go do that. And what's happening I don't know if it's the same in your street, Jamie, like street is so quiet, and then all of a sudden Halloween, everyone's out and everyone's offering me booze. Like everyone's like, just stop, have a drink. And we're like, well, we got other houses to get to. It's like, just have a Jello shot or whatever. And I can never do it because I always have to leave and go right to work after trick-or-treating with my kids. So I actually took tomorrow off, and my son is going as Super Mario and I'm going as Luigi. My wife got me the Luigi hat and everything. So I gotta say, it's gonna be that's gonna be my favorite costume ever. It doesn't get much better than going as Mario and Luigi with your kid.
All right. Well, you may hate Halloween or not like it that much, but you must eat the candy. So what's your favorite candy, your go-to candy?
I love this question. This is more in my wheelhouse.
Okay.
I don't know if I can like but what I always come back to is Caramilks. Well, I'll say this.
There's not a lot of those kicking around at Halloween. You notice that? Caramilk is not popular.
Because they're a little more expensive. I think they're popular. But the Caramilk package, which I think is the Twix and the Caramilk, that group of candies is a smidge more expensive than the classic Nestle Kit Kat Coffee Crisp Smarties package. So believe me,
there's been a study on this. There's been a study on this. Look it up.
Okay, I believe it. Believe me, I'm handing out the Kit Kat. If I go to a house and the Caramilks and the Twixes are there, I'm like, wow, they are really taking this. They're putting some money into this, and I appreciate that from these people, because to me, Caramilks are still the number one chocolate bar. I will say, as someone who worked in the States for a while,
they don't have Kit Kat down there.
But it's not. It's the chocolate. The chocolate is chalky.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain, Jamie. It's not the same. Our chocolate is so much better than American chocolate, just from a candy bar perspective.
Yeah, of course.
Standard at the corner store candy bar.
Yeah.
Our chocolate is.
That's where we really shine.
We really do it. That's where I feel like our British influence actually pays off. It doesn't pay off in other ways necessarily, but it really comes through in the candy and the different chocolate bars. And I remember when we worked down there, every time we come back, because we came back and we brought a whole bunch of Canadian chocolate bars down for the crew to try in LA. And they were just obsessed with it because it was so much better. It was just better chocolate. So we may not have won all the battles with the US, but the Halloween candy battles, we've got it hands down.
Canada, we do Halloween candy better than you.
That's right.
All right, man. Thank you so much for your time, and have fun on Halloween with your kids, and have fun going forward, obviously.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Morrissey walking right in, slap shot. Now Connor shoots, stop, rebound.
Pleased to welcome the program NHL insider Chris Johnston to Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets. Chris, before we get into the Adam Johnson situation with equipment and everything like that, just wanted to touch on you quickly. Congratulations on the new job with The Athletic. What made you make this decision to join them?
It was a pretty easy decision. I'll say that, Jamie. As soon as I had the chance to go work at a place like The Athletic, it was something I was very excited about, and signed on 2 weeks. It's been a crazy 2 weeks. No shortage of stories here in the early going of the NHL season for me to jump in. I'm doing a role where I'm covering the league nationally, dipping into some big stories, obviously tackling big league-wide events and trying to tell the stories from all the different teams that are out there as opposed to just one. So, it was a great opportunity for me, and I'm super excited to be aboard with The Athletic.
How often was Pierre LeBrun recruiting you when you guys were out on the road together?
He's pretty compelling, Pierre. I seem to be following him around. I'm sure that's the way he would phrase it. Our careers many years ago began in this industry at the Canadian Press. And we work together on our TV work at TSN nowadays as well. So, following my mentor around the league has proven to be a good thing so far.
All right, you talked about how you're tackling big league issues right now, big picture issues. Clearly, in the wake of the tragedy with Adam Johnston, there's discussions now about protection. What kind of topics or conversations have come up or are going to come up in the future with the National Hockey League?
Well, the first thing that stands out to me is you might see some individual players make the decision on their own to opt for more protection, whether that's a base layer that includes, something that protects the neck, or maybe what we might call a more traditional neck guard. I think that that's natural to imagine because, this was obviously a horrific incident, an accident. You're talking about someone in Adam Johnston who has connections to all sorts of NHL players through his time in the NCAA ranks and the American Hockey League and, for a time with the Pittsburgh Penguins before he went overseas. And so, this has been a very personal tragedy, I think, for a lot of players, probably a moment for reflection. The next question, of course, is what happens at the league level. And, really these discussions go back quite a number of years now. I think the NHL's been aware that skate cuts are on the rise in the league. To this point, the focus has mostly been on cuts to the wrist area and to the Achilles, the back of the ankle. In fact, this year, the American Hockey League and the ECHL both have a mandate in place where players have to protect those two areas on their body. And the idea there was sort of a chance for the NHL to evaluate how that goes. And I think that that's something we could see in the future. But obviously with the nature of what happened to Adam Johnston, I think the neck area is going to get more focus. And, probably the next place you'll see those conversations happen, at least in a public forum, is November 14th in Toronto. The GMs have their annual meeting here around Hall of Fame weekend. And I would think that'll be one of the major topics up for discussion.
Certainly when it was brought up with Josh Morrissey and Mark Scheifele today, Chris, it seemed like personal preference will come into play down the road here. Do you see any change into that?
Maybe for a time. I mean, look, I'll fast forward in my mind. I think that there's a day that this will all be mandated.
Right.
That's just my personal belief. The question is, how do we go from where we're sitting here having this conversation today to that point in time? How much time elapses? What are all the things that need to happen? I don't have the crystal ball for that, but I spoke with someone here in the last 24 hours who's a pretty prominent equipment manufacturer with regards to skate, basically cut resistant material in hockey equipment. And he says that this is all preventable, that there is a neck guard that exists today on planet Earth that, if Adam Johnston had been wearing it, would have saved his life. And obviously that's the kind of piece of equipment that other players have to consider if they want to put on. I recognize that it's not something they're familiar with in a lot of cases. I mean, USA Hockey right now doesn't make neck protection mandatory in the youth leagues. I mean, the federations in Canada and Sweden, to name two, do have that already mandatory. So players that come up through those systems are used to it. But American hockey players certainly have the option to wear it as kids, but they don't have to. It's not something that's required. So I think that this is certainly not just an NHL issue or a professional hockey issue. It's probably first and foremost an amateur and recreational hockey level issue, because I think that that's probably far more important just in terms of the numbers of people affected. But certainly, yes, for the short term, players are going to have the option. I would think like visors came into the league with a grandfathering system. Eventually, players will just not be given that choice at the top level of hockey, but there's still some hurdles to clear before we are there.
Well, the league is always trying something new, Chris, to draw eyes. And there was Frozen Frenzy a Tuesday ago about staggered starts throughout the league with 16 different games. What was the response level for that situation?
Like anything, I heard a couple small complaints, but I think it's largely positive. And I do believe it's something. I know there's another game or another day on the calendar of this season where all 32 teams are scheduled to play again in sort of a similar vein. I think this will be something that does become a tradition or something that's done once or twice or maybe more than that every season. And why not? I think it's a great showcase for the sport. Look, the NHL is looking for all the ways to get new interest in it. Clearly by staggering the starts, for example, betting interest. And I know that might be a sensitive topic in the moment, but, it does fuel, some fan interest that way because there's an opportunity to bet on so many different games and watch the games. I know ESPN south of the border ran a sort of a puck surfing type program, NFL Red Zone type program where they bounce between the games. I think it just makes too much sense to find the right days on the calendar to make it work. It's not always easy from a scheduling standpoint with 32 teams traveling all across the continent, bouncing everywhere here, there, and there. But, I think it sort of hit its target from the league's perspective. And I do think we're going to see more of it in the future.
For a lot of people, hockey fans, there's the misunderstanding of why there's not a lot of games on Mondays and certainly Wednesday and then again on Fridays. So can you kind of explain to people, having worked for both national networks at TSN and Sportsnet, kind of like a general explanation of why those are usually light nights in terms of scheduling in the NHL?
Well, I'll be the first to say some of this is beyond my pay grade, because I've never looped into those discussions and the roles that I've had for the networks. But
right.
I think there's a multitude of factors. I mean, building availability can be a real issue. Every team leading into the coming season submits to the league a list of certain dates that they can host home games, and that's sort of how the schedule starts. Essentially, they cross-reference those lists and start to make a schedule. Things get moved around from there. So, I think that could be a factor. Certain markets, for the reasons of selling tickets, want to have games on certain nights, especially maybe early in the year. You see, some American markets, they don't like having too many home games because, it's a tough time of year going head-to-head with an NFL team in your city. So that can lead to it. The TV networks themselves have certain deals. Sportsnet in Canada has a Wednesday night, a Saturday, and a Monday night where they get to show national games or similar kind of arrangements in the U.S. And so that sort of slots games in a particular pattern. And we only see teams play at most, games on back-to-back nights, right? I mean, part of this is just a rest and recovery function. And so if there's a ton of games scheduled, as there are around the weekend, most teams play one of Saturday or Sunday, and in some cases both. It means early in the week, that's travel days, that's days off. I mean, that's just rest and recovery as well. And so I think that it's a combination of all those things. It's not as though the NHL hates one night. I think that they're trying to satisfy a lot of different people in this, right? They're trying to satisfy some individual demands at the market level. They try to satisfy their TV partners on a number of levels. And, as a result, we kind of get the schedule you have.
I feel like you just took me inside the Board of Governor meetings right there with that answer. So thank you very much. You cleared that up just great. With the starts of the Oilers and Flames, is there any panic buttons being pressed in the province of Alberta right now?
Well, I think there's a lot if you're talking to the fans. I think that the difficult thing is in the management level within those organizations, not to panic. And you don't want to make too much of one game, but you can see what the win for Edmonton meant. I mean, that was an emotional game, being a host to this event. Obviously, there's a lot of buildup in their marketplace. To have that many people come out to Commonwealth Stadium for the Heritage Classic, and with the way the Oilers had started, with the fact that Connor McDavid returns from a brief absence from injury, and they get that victory, you just wonder if this propels them forward. For Calgary, it's the opposite end of the tape, and I think that they're still scratching their heads. There was so much talk and optimism in Flames camp and the new head coach. Some of the contracts they've signed in terms of extending their own players. I thought that there was a renewed optimism, and then here you are 3 weeks into the season, give or take. And I think there's tough questions being asked. And so, I really don't think that the GMs are panicking per se, but certainly I get why there's increased attention around those teams, and fans might be of that mind because, the season is hard. When you see teams, fall out of a playoff spot in the first month, typically 1 or 2 or 3 do climb their way back in, but it's a difficult task in a league where there's a lot of 3-point nights and 3-point games. So, I think that they're not full panic yet, but that's a tough loss for the Flames, especially against their provincial rival.
All right, no more tough questions in this program for you. It is the Halloween edition of Ground Control. So what was your favorite Halloween costume growing up?
Well, my Halloween days are long, long ago.
Yes.
But certainly my favorite costume, I think, as a kid, is I went as Super Mario once. And this is in the days where you didn't just go on Amazon and order that. My mom had to make it meticulously. And she did a great job. And so that was probably my favorite costume back in the day. I was a big Nintendo fan as a kid, and I thought that was a cool costume.
All right, last one. Favorite Halloween candy?
Oh, do I only have to pick one? I mean, maybe a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
Goes without saying, it's the Halloween candy of everybody. So,
but maybe any chocolate bar though as a consolation prize. I mean, I've been trying really hard. I actually stocked up on the weekend for my own Halloween candy to give out at my front door. And I've been trying really hard not to crack into those boxes ahead of time here.
Chris, thank you so much for your insight and your time. Happy Halloween to you.
Same to you, brother.
Thanks so much to Jay Onrait and Chris Johnston for joining the show. Big show coming up again next week. We're going to talk goaltending with Jamie McLennan, the goaltending guru from TSN as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Happy Halloween. Enjoy your week. We'll talk to you next time.